Halland Chen.
Okay, so let's get everybody into the same sync here. When we move our body together, we breathe together, we sync up. So I want you, while you're sitting, you do this. You cross your right ankle over or your right leg. Just as long as your ankles are crossed, okay? Take your right hand, put it underneath your left armpit, your left hand on top. Turn your head to the right and your body to the left. Remember this from yesterday? Head to the right, body to left. Okay, we're going to take 6 breaths together, 3 through the mouth and 3 through the nose. So breathe into your mouth. 2, 3, through your nose. 2, 3. Okay. Now, feels like we're closer to you, right? All in sync. Okay, very good.
Thank you, Gary, for that opening. So thank you so much for everyone being here. Today I wanted to talk about a very special topic, and it's really about the 3 pillars of longevity. And I couldn't think of a better panel to have where we have its brain, body, and biology. And each one of us represent mastery in that level. And so I wanted to introduce Jim Kwik. He's a New York Times bestseller. He's a coach to some of the top performing executives in mindset, memory, learning. We've got Garry. He's a master in fascia work. He's done so much to help millions and millions of people achieve being pain-free and actually connecting with your body as well. And then obviously for me, I'm an expert in longevity, stem cells, and all things cellular. And so I wanted to kick off this talk on how the brain, body, and biology sync up into things. And so I want to start off with Jim, because he's done so many keynotes, and I've been fortunate enough to see him on stage and likewise present at his conferences. So it only naturally made sense to have Jim open up and talk about how the brain can help with longevity, and just really how the mindset and how you get into a peak mindset condition for your health.
Good morning, everybody. By the way, this is just awesome. Wonderful way to spend Monday mornings, just a typical Monday morning. Well, there's your chronological age, right? It's your longevity span, which is years, and then there's your health span in terms of how functional you are in those years, and then I focus a lot on cognitive span. If I could grant all of you an extra 30 years of life, but you would have cognitive decline every year starting now, most people would kind of take that deal, right? Because our brains, I lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's when I was 7 years old. I don't know if anyone has a family member or a loved one that, had challenges in the brain aging. So I'm very passionate about this. We donated all the proceeds to Limitless to Alzheimer's Research for Women in her memory. But women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. And a lot of the research is done, on men and treatments and such. There are a number, I feel like when we're talking about your brain, how many of you came here today, you feel like your brain is overloaded, too much to learn, too little time? Anyone have books on your shelf you haven't read yet? They become shelf-help, not self-help. Anyone get anyone came here today feel like to have a better memory? Raise your hand. Anyone forgot why you came here today? Can we talk here? Have you ever walked into a room of your own home and just forgot why you're there? Right? Or you read a page in a book, get to the end, just forget what you just read. Or you misplace things like your wallet, your purse, your car keys, or if not your car keys, something larger like your car. You ever see the people with the car using their car alarm like GPS? Or names and faces or whatever. So those are the areas I support people in. I believe there's no such thing as a good or bad brain, but it's more like the trained brain and an untrained brain. They say when it comes to brain aging, things like dementia, that your genetics loads the gun, but your lifestyle would trigger it and fire it. So I focus a lot on protocols. I teach kind of like the hardware software. I teach the software to learn faster, to read faster, to improve your memory, have focus and flow. But you also have to take care of that 3-pound matter between your ears, which is your brain. So, which is, I feel like, it's the control center of most of our life.
Yeah, and I love that. Jim and I have talked a lot about the hardware software aspect, and really, if you think about that, Garry is really the hardware. And I think probably I'm the electrons, right? The cells floating around between the hardware and the software. So Garry, kind of given that context, obviously there's a very deep interaction between the brain, the body, and the biology. We've talked about it, is in the body the subconscious, or is the subconscious at the brain? Because a lot of the work that you deal with is how the body stores trauma. And so trauma could be also a subconscious process too. So maybe you could help elaborate that, because I think a lot of us go through things that we think are physical, but there's obviously a mental and physical component to it.
Yeah, one of the things that we can do is start to reframe what trauma is. Trauma is an experience that we have that is shocking. And that could be physical, emotional, perceptual. It doesn't have to be, it could be any one of those. As a child, the perceptual experience is just as real as beating. And then there's an emotion that's attached to it: anger, shame, fear, guilt, sadness, something that you attach to that actual physical experience. And then there's a narrative which you tell yourself about it. And what we found is that if we do emotional work and talk work, but there's still physical trauma that's stuck in the fascial tissue of the body, the hard drive of the body, then that keeps reinfecting. So people they come out of these emotional problems, but then they get triggered back into them by the body. And at the end, your body will always win. So the question is, where does the subconscious live? I have asked roughly 10,000 physicians the same question. Where in the body does the subconscious live? And so I just have a different way of framing it. I see that the brain is the awareness of it's the observation and awareness of your subconscious. And everything we do is subconscious, technically, and we observe it through patterns. So that's why, Jim, you're training patterns, and we can observe it differently. And if you think about it, our brain traditionally we thought ran the body, but the brain had in sensory perceptive abilities, call it horsepower. The brain has like 100 billion horsepower, but your fascia has a brain called an interstitium, which we know about, but it's like quantum physics versus physics. We don't really acknowledge it. And that fascia has 250 trillion chemicals out there, and we have 5 senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, hear, and smell. That's the 5 that we are taught, but we have these other 10 senses: clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience. It's that thought in your head that maybe I shouldn't do that gut instinct. Where does that come from? Well, those are all out here in that field of ours, and they connect to the body through the fascia. So the real thing is that I see the body as a fluid adaptive biological computing system, and I see the brain as a processor which observes patterns and runs programs. And if I recontextualize it that way, this is my simple way of understanding it, then it makes more sense in how to work with the body. So what we do is we move the body into a state of flow, which then creates an emotional response, which then allows the brain to tell a narrative new story if it's capable. And this is where, Jim, what you do is so powerful, because telling the new story, you can take everything out of your body and you can even yell your emotions out, but if you don't tell a new story, it doesn't sit. So it's 3 alchemies of storage or trauma that have to be in place for the body to release.
And so Jim, how powerful is the mind over the body? I mean, I talk about longevity a lot, and sometimes I even view longevity as a formula. Longevity equals resilience plus capacity, right? Capacity is your body's ability to handle change, the ability to recover and heal. A large part of what I do on the biology side, right? Stem cells, energy, things to reduce inflammation. But then when we think about the word resilience, what does that mean in terms of how the brain or the mind approaches things? And how does that lead to, longevity?
So, building on what Gary's talking about, I really believe it's almost like our body is our mind. That if your nervous system is locked up, that's not the technical term, but you're in survival mode, right? Fight or flight. It holds you hostage away from your executive functioning, your creativity, your ability to problem solve, your ability to kind of access flow states. So the work is so very important. And I would always go, personally, it's hard to think your way out of something, and so starting with the nervous system and your physiology definitely affects your psychology. Power of the mind, we just did a podcast about this there's cognitive resistance, right? And I feel like cognitive resistance functionally is like bouncing back, right? You can handle certain stressors in the world, whether it be financial stress, market stresses, toxic load, whatever. I also think that there's a cognitive anti-fragility, which is not just bouncing back, it's bouncing forward. And even if you look at nature, that's why doing some of these hard things is so very important, because I feel like, you look at nature like, the hormetic response, right? Temperature adaptation. You look at weight training. You look at even neuroplasticity. It takes novelty, and through it, we get stronger. And so to be able to exercise the level and put yourself doing the hard things, like what some people it's heat, sometimes it's cold. Some people, everyone's a little bio individual, I find. But even like a kid's immune system. There's some kind of response, right? If they're exposed to certain bacterias, early on, their immune system grows stronger. That's how I'm looking at, anti-fragility. When I'm talking about cognitive anti-fragility, it's your ability to be able to deal with today's stressors, but actually become stronger because of it. And going back to the power of the mind, we had recently Dr. Ellen Langer on our podcast. She's from Harvard, and she was talking about longevity. And there she did a study way back in 1979, and it's called the counterclockwise study, where she took individuals, men, in their late 70s, early 80s to New Hampshire on a retreat. And the thing that was, she tested all these biomarkers, right? Strength, hearing, grip strength, sight, and focus, memory. And she put them in this retreat for 7 days. But she decorated the retreat as if it was 20 years earlier, 1959. So black and white television, magazines, took out all the mirrors so they couldn't see themselves. And she only gave them one direction. She said, don't even remember back in 1959. Pretend it is, act as if it was 1959. And she left them there for 7 days. At the end of 7 days, she tested those same markers. Their vision improved, their grip strength improved, their hearing improved, memory, focus. They even took pictures before and after and showed it to a focus group, and 100% of them recognized the latter picture as the younger self. So talk about the power of the mind. In terms, I think you're almost like your brain is like a supercomputer, and your self-talk, your beliefs, and your thoughts are a belief is just a thought you've had numerous times. If you say to yourself, "I'm not good at remembering names," you won't remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your computer not to.
So Garry, I've always we've talked about this as well, it's like a chicken and egg phenomenon, Sometimes the mind behaves a certain way and then the body stores it like a hard drive. Sometimes the body receives an input and gets damaged and then the brain remembers it. How do you view that? What's the difference? Is there a difference between like the body storing things or the mind triggering pain in the body?
Well, again, go back to the body's a computer, the brain's a processor. It's identifying programs and solving them, or trying to solve them. And if it can't, it creates a loop. So if you think about it, think about the term dismember, which is used to talk about the body specifically, right? If I dismember a body, I'm cutting it up. If I want to remember, think of how phonetically words are used. Remember is to put the pieces back together. So memory, I found, is highly tied to fascia in the body and in different areas of the body. So when we do a fascial work with somebody, all of a sudden they have a memory. Bill just had a memory, a really, really intense memory from something we did yesterday. A very, very intense one that was prophetic. And so, in other words, imagine this as a neural network, it's a highway. And if the roads aren't going, the information doesn't get to the brain to quite recall. So then the recall can be disrupted or constructed differently. And as Jim was saying, it's what you tell yourself a story. So I've had a memory, like I was sexually abused by my father, okay? And I didn't remember it until 4 years ago. Now, imagine the shock in my mind when I had that memory. And it was like, oh my, like where did it go? But then I started deconstructing all of the stories. Every time that feeling had come up in my life where it could have been a question mark, there was something that was wrong. And what I found is that unlocked with this very specific action in my body. And then the memory, I was able to remember or form those memories and come back. So the memories are really a funny one. And I also find that emotions which is energy and motion, is the charger of our memories. And I'll also go a deep one. I did a 44-day fast, my very first fast ever. 44 days water, 2 weeks without water, and 6 weeks without food. The funniest thing that happened to me that it redesigned my entire way of thinking of human experience was after the 28th day, and if anybody's done 28 days without food, your body loses the memory of what food tastes like. So intellectually I go, I like that chicken, and I like it cooked that way, but when I taste it, I'm like, oh my God, did it always taste like this? And I had 2 other people I did the fast with. So I had a trifecta, and almost very few people have ever gone 28 days without food. And that experience taught me something about how memory processes and the emotions of memory. And since we've never gone 28 days, which is the human habituation cycle, without having that input, because food drives hormones which hit the save drive on those memories. That's why you should never eat mad, never eat fearful. You should never eat when you have a negative emotion. If you have a negative emotion, get up from the table, do not eat, because that's hard drive, putting in your hard drive. Those hormones are like boom. It's all of the dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, all the things that you normally get that are addictive when you watch online. That same stuff comes when you eat food. That's why we have a big emotional event. Also, we want to eat.
So speaking of memory, we happen to have the world's top memory expert here. How does our memory play games or tricks on us where it sabotages our health, our habits? Because you're right, maybe we might walk into a room and forget why we're there, but we probably know why we're there. So how does our memory play or help or hurt us when we're trying to do things?
We do an event called Limitless Lives since 2009, and one of them we had Mary Lou Henner, an actress. I'm 53, so I'm just kind of giving away my age. There are about 18 individuals that are known that have a trait called HSAM, which is highly superior autobiographical memory. You could put out a date and a year, and she could tell you exactly what's going on in the news and everything that she experienced. And some people think that would be amazing, to be able to have that kind of recall. But I mean, how many of you you've had incidences that you want to be able to forget also as well? So that would be a nice course on the art of forgetting. But
do you offer that course?
This is now I'm just thinking about it. Side there. But memory, there's a 3-stage. So you don't have a memory, you do a memory. A lot of what I do in terms of training is taking nouns and turning them into verbs. I think this experience over the next couple of days, part of the term I would use is about transcending. Being a stick for words, Gary. Like if you transcend, you're ending the trance. And there's this massive gnosis through marketing and media that says we're broken, that we need to be fixed, that somehow we're not enough, whatever it is. And also there's a self-hypnosis with what we're believing and saying about ourselves in terms of who we are, what we're capable of, what we deserve, also as well. And so mindset definitely plays a role. But so you don't have a memory, you do it. You don't have motivation, there's a process for motivating yourself. You don't even have energy, there's a process for generating energy. And so the benefit of turning into a verb is you have your agency back, right? You don't wake up and hope, which is not a great strategy, as we know in business or in life, that you just have focus. There's a process for focusing yourself. And so memory, the 3-stage process, you encode information, you store it, and then you retrieve it. And so what we teach, and I'll be talking about this tomorrow morning in the memory training, is I believe at a certain level in business, 2 of the most costly words I forgot. I mean, just think about the consequences of saying I forgot to do it, I forgot to bring it, I forgot what I was going to say, I forgot what was told to me, I forgot to go to that meeting, I forgot that name. On the other side, in business, I know we have a lot of founders, investors here, but you could easily remember client information, product information, give speeches without notes, names and faces, all that. You have an edge, even in an area. I think AI is scaling, but what is it scaling? It's scaling HI, right? Your human intelligence, what you bring to it. And so, the nature of our mission is enhancing human intelligence, which includes things like intuition and wisdom and things that aren't necessarily taught in school, right? School taught you what to learn, math, history, science, but they're not a lot of classes on how, like what to learn, but how to learn, how to think, how to focus, how to flow, remember, and so on. But it really starts, the art of memory is the art of attention. Like shake out your hand, right? Just shake out, everyone sees me, make a fist, put it to your chin. Now where's your chin? Right? So, observation, a lot of us, we're not even just paying attention because we're so distracted. Whether it happens to be our devices, and we flex, our distraction muscles, and we can't focus on Zooms and meetings, and yeah, that was a good one. But I would say, even remembering someone's name, you have this incredible, asset that you have, you can remember a name, but what are we doing? We're not really there with the person, we're not completely present. And one of the reasons I feel like we're not present is because our bodies are not, incoherent.
100% agree with that, because if you could, in my mind, the single job of the brain is to identify patterns, resolve them, and patterns are, if you have dysfunction, that's a pattern. And so if your body is in physiological stress, your brain is constantly trying to solve it. I can take somebody that, one of the things that clinically, like working with movement and pain, we'd have people come in, we do a very exhaustive intake form, like why are you here, what's happened, how long, what does it feel like, all this, because we would have these, in the clinic when we were back in Los Angeles, we have these 16-week protocols. And invariably, people are coming to us and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, we were the very first biohacking clinic on the planet. And we brought all these modalities together. So it was very expensive. We had 5 doctors on every patient at every time, if you can imagine that. So it's not a revenue model, it's an experimental model. And invariably, somebody would always come up, not somebody, about a third of the patient base would come up somewhere between the 3rd and the 5th week, and they go, hey, I need to see Garry. I came here, my shoulder isn't working. My shoulder, what's wrong with my shoulder? And I got to get this, it's not getting fixed and all this. And I'd take out their intake form and I said, oh, that's pretty interesting. You came in here for your hip. How's your hip? And they would look bewildered, because when your body lets go of the pain or dysfunction, it doesn't have all of this religion and all this dogma about it. If you have a pain and you've been there for 30, 40 years, and it's gone, you stop thinking about it. Your brain doesn't care anymore. It goes, I only care about the next. And Bill actually testified to that, like literally yesterday, right? Absolutely. Your brain no longer thinks about that back issue that's been there for a year, we can't walk, and the years coming up to that. It's like, boom, I no longer even know that it's there. And this is the powerful thing, because our bodies, our fluid adaptive biological computing system has one edict on this planet. It's adapt. And resilience is a word that we use, but I don't like that word because it means fighting. Adaptation is what the body's trying to do, and that's to adapt means once it no longer has to adapt, it goes on to the next adaptation, and it forgets about all the ones before. And this is what you're talking about, sequencing. Like when you get up, you don't do things, or you don't have things, you do them, and that's sequencing. That's programmed adaptation over time. And if you do that, you will always win. And you train your brain. You say the words. We stop telling spells. Like you guys walk around. You don't really hear me say good morning to you, right? I say, buenos dias, good day, whatever it is. But I avoid the word good morning because there's nothing on morning, and I don't want to have that programming in my nervous system. If that makes sense. We tell spells every day. And those spells are what affect us, and that's what you're saying, it's a reinforcement. And we have a process for doing that, but society, we've garnered a process of dysfunction through our communication, which disables the average person, and I think you would agree with that, right?
Completely. I mean, words have a lot of power on our nervous system, that is conscious and certainly mostly non-conscious.
I always say words are very powerful, even the words you used with yourself and how to describe things. I try to be very careful with terminology even when I talk to people, and what Garry had mentioned. I call it unmasking. So when I treat people, my background is interventional pain management, when they come in with back pain and they say, well, what about my upper neck, my neck? It's like, well, you just always had neck pain. You just noticed the back before because we finally unlocked it. We unlocked the back pain, and now you notice all the other secondary symptoms. And so, Jim's had quite an incredible story, and so has Garry, who's been through a lot of life. And I think that actually unlocks a lot of things for us, in terms of what we can do. And so one of the key things I try to work on is how do I unlock your physiology? And a lot of it is just what I call almost overriding certain aspects of biology, in the sense of we're replacing things that are not working. Like if you're having a lot of inflammation in your body, we can unlock that with NAD. If you're not healing as well, or you're basically getting sick all the time, we can unlock that with stem cells. So with Jim, like, your origin story, I think a lot of people already know. What is the next unlock for you? What is the next thing that you'd like to achieve? Because everyone in this room is like a super performer. And I think what's interesting is like the process of what a high performer does to get to the next level. What would be your next unlock?
So what Halland's referring to is that put me on this path is when I was 5 years old, I had a traumatic brain injury, and I had learned I was called learning disabled, right? It took me 3 years long to learn how to read. I had very challenged coordination, bumping into things. I would have migraines every single day. So you can imagine like my self-esteem, my self-confidence, my self-worth. When I was 9 years old, I was slowing down in class, and my real name really is Kwik. It's not like a stage name. It's my father's name, my grandfather's name. But I was called Slow all the time. And in this class, and when I was 9, I remember a teacher who kept on repeating herself over and over just for me in the class. And I was being teased pretty harshly. And a teacher came to my defense. She had good intentions. She pointed to me and said, "Leave that kid alone. That's the boy with the broken brain." And how many of you have children? How many of you once were a child? And I think play, a lot of what we teach is the power of play. I think really it is, creativity is intelligence, having fun, right? And building, whatever it happens to be you're creating. And the future belongs to those creators. But, adults have to be very careful of their external words because they often become a child's internal words. So every single time I was big for sports all the time, did badly in school all the time, I would say, oh, because I have a broken brain. And that became my identity. So we do a lot of identity work. It's hard to get somebody to stop smoking if they see themselves, I am a smoker, or do the work if they see themselves, I am a procrastinator, and so on. And that's a different kind of conversation. But Limitless, the name of my book, is not about being perfect. It's about, going beyond what you're currently demonstrating or believe is possible. And I think there's a version of ourself, our business, our impact that's currently waiting in the future. And the goal is we show up every single day, learning and giving until we're introduced. But even now, when we look at memory, like this moment here is a memory that your future self is having. So there's multiple timelines, and there's a quote in Limitless that says, "Life is the letter C between the letters B and D, where B is birth and D is death, and life C, your whole life is choice," right? And we make these choices all the time. Like these difficult times, they distract you. These difficult times can diminish you, or these difficult times, they can develop you, right? We decide. And I think one of the most important unlocks there is like, I feel like life is difficult for one of two reasons. Either we're leaving our comfort zone, right? We're starting that venture, asking for that investment, whatever it happens to be, or life is difficult because we stay in our comfort zone also as well. And while the truth is, sometimes change can be scary, right? Because while you want to adapt, a lot of times we're in this survival mode, right? And so change can be scary and unknown. Your amygdala is kind of firing off and under threat because uncertainty. And growth can be sometimes hard to grow a business, to grow a brand, to grow yourself. But nothing is as scary and hard as being stuck somewhere you don't belong. Right, and so the unlock for me is, and this is why I want to learn more about, Human Garage, and I feel I'm hyper aware of my posture and my breathing right now, sitting next to you. But and all of you should be also very aware too. I think awareness is kind of the start. But I think, part of this is, while they do changing the world one body at a time, our goal is 1 billion brains. No brain left behind. So if we have a lot of smart, intelligent, connected individual here, we want to be able to change people at every age and stage and build better, brighter brains.
And I have a video I was going to show at the end, but I'm going to show it before because it relates to stuff that Garry talks about. Craig, do you want to just play that video for me, please? I interviewed Garry yesterday, and we talked about resilience. And he talked about adaptability, and I really like that because it kind of shifted a little bit in my perspective because, resilience is that mechanism where we are stronger. I view it as a strength builder, but I like the word adaptability. And so if anyone who knows me, I always like fun surprises and adventures. So this is a extra fun surprise adventure if you happen to want to decompress and stay a little longer. This is a course. I'll let you watch the video and I'll talk about it. Well, I'll talk over it. Basically, this is a course on resilience training, or aka adaptability training, and it's for executives and CEOs, and what they use is free diving as a mechanism to overcome fear. And so they're using your body's physiology to do something different and maybe scary by free diving 50 feet down. And you're with a Harvard-trained professor who basically has this knowledge of using the body and the breath and training your strength and overcoming fear. And so obviously the project's called Ocean Oriented, which I really like a lot. And I like how it does this immersive experience. We're obviously in a very beautiful island, but how can we use our breath and body to overcome fear and build that resilience or adaptability? And so there's a special trip that's going to go out probably Thursday for 6 people who want to come join and learn that extra level of adaptability or resilience. So I kind of wanted to bring that to Garry on how that breath, because you're doing a lot of things with breath in the body, and how can we use that to build resilience, or exercises like that to build resilience or adaptability?
Listen, I spent my life initially into success, training my brain, reading books, but I always physically was active with my body. And then I went through all the body things, the workouts, the yoga, the breath work and stuff like this. And I think we have to tear apart and determine what things are in order to understand them, because we have this combined, mixed up understanding. For example, breath is movement is life. If you don't move, you don't live. If parts of your body are not moving, you're going to diminish your function in life. We get energy through movement. Food takes away our energy, and I'll explain that later. But if movement is life, then the origin of all movement is breath, because that's your body moving multiple times per day. Now, currently, I breathe 3 breaths per minute in a sitting phase, and I can change it to 1 breath per minute in any given second. And that the less we breathe, actually, the longer we live. And so there's this paradox, which over 12 breaths per minute, we are paradoxically breathing. It means we're actually generating stress on the breath. Now, the average person breathes 15 to 16 breaths per minute. And what we're in the way medicine and science works, it says, well, that's the average person. But it's also clinically true at the same time that over 12 breaths per minute, you're hyperventilating. So breathing is, and this is the secret of breathing that almost nobody understands. I've activated 100,000 diaphragms, and with some of the best breathwork coaches on the planet, and I've only had a half dozen people in all these years, 100,000 people, I've only had a half dozen people that had truly active diaphragms. So all of the breath happens here in the lower rib cage. The lower part of the lung is where oxygen is converted, DO2 it's called. And this is why breath is so important, but it's not the breathing that you think. We think that people, well, I'm breathing. But if you're not getting oxygen into the lower lung, you're not breathing. And for physicians out there, they'll tell you that every lung pathology is a lower lung pathology. Why? Because if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. So breath is the key point, but it's breath in the lower lungs, and we're going to do an activation later. That one that we did like this, what it does is it opens up the floating ribs. And that's why you get calmer, because that means that oxygen is converted better. So it's not just about breathing, it's about how your oxygen is converted, and that's why it's so important.
Great. Well, thank you, Garry. I know your talk is coming up next. Jim, I really appreciate you being here. You're going to be doing a great session tomorrow. So we have a very special activation also with Garry on the beach, which he'll talk about later today. So
when am I doing that?
That's going to be, I think, later on, like 3 or 4 o'clock-ish.
Yeah.
It's going to be at Hermitage Bay. So
okay, well, we're going to do something here, because
perfect.
I don't really like talking. I like moving, because the origin of all language is body language. And so we're going to dive into a little bit of that right now.
Perfect. Well, we'll let you get into that then. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.